Hello there, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you once again on this here Shabbat. I hope everybody's been well and had a blessed week. As for me, I had a pretty good week. As you can see, I trimmed up. It got to where it was aggravating me. It's kind of a soup catcher, if you will, soup catcher, and getting hung in zippers and stuff like that, and it just kind of got to aggravate me. So I decided to whack it off, see what I look like under it. Of course, it's kind of cold. It's kind of cold, but feels a little different. I've been reading the apocryphal book of Second Esdras, because I'm just trying to find something that will kind of confirm what I believe the time that we're in, the little season or whatever, that goes along with what the scripture says, because I've been reading that too, in Matthew. Yahushua was pretty clear that his second coming is clear is in their time, in that generation's time, and it's not our time. But it's funny. I mean, if you are taught something, like I said, the dispensational Protestant Christian belief, then you get that in your head, and that's the only way you can seem to see it. It's like I've talked about, programming. You get programmed a certain way, and you can't really see it any other way, unless that programming is erased and reprogramming begins to take place. And I think that's what's happened is that, because I have sincerely prayed to know the truth, that's what's been going on, is that, and it's not all coming at one time. It's been over a period of years, really over like the last 30 years, but, things like about the Sabbath and about the Christmas and Easter and stuff like that, finding out, they're pagan and all that stuff. And so I've been reading in this Second Esdras, because I had read this before, but I never really wasn't really able to kind of put it together. Excuse me. And this is in chapter 11 of Second Esdras. And by the way, all of these books that are called the apocryphal books were in the original 1611 King James. But later on they took them out because the Catholics had them in their Bible. I think there's their Bible that they came out with. To begin with, it was like the Vulgate or whatever, and then whenever the King James came out, the Catholics decided that they had to, at least this is the narrative, that they needed to have a book that, because they didn't allow their laity to have the Bible. They had them chained inside of their cathedrals or whatever, and you just took it for what the priest or whatever said it meant or said, and you wasn't allowed to read it. Well, then whenever the King James come out and the common man could have a copy of it, they came out with the Dewey Reams Bible, and so that they published theirs, and so that the laity could now have a copy of it if they wanted it. At least what they claimed that it was written in the Vulgate or whatever. And so when they came out with theirs and it had the apocryphal books in it, then the Protestants said, we're going to take it out. We don't want to be like them. And now, as to whether these books are inspired, I can't say one way or the other. These people that are very dogmatic that the 66 books that are in the canon are absolutely, you know, the spoken word of Elohim, and that they're the only ones that are the legitimate ones. Well, that's I don't see as how, now that I think about that, I don't see how anybody can say, they're just taking that on belief that they are the original books of the canon, and that all these other extra biblical texts are just written by men, and they're not inspired or whatever. Well, we don't know that. Nobody knows that. And I know that Scriptures mentions all these other books, in the King James. When you're reading through there, you'll come to where it says, "Is it not written in such and such a book?" So, and Esdras is really Ezra, and there is a book of Ezra in the canon, and then there's also these two books here, First and Second Esdras. And this is when they're still in captivity under the Babylonians or whatever. Because in here, when you read it, it says that they have been in captivity, or Jerusalem has been at rest for 30 years. And it was because of them not keeping the Sabbath of the land that they went into, it was one of the main reasons why they went into captivity, because they refused to keep the Sabbath of the land, and the land needed to rest. And so it got 70 years of rest. But anyway, the land, it says, had been resting for 30 years. And so I've been reading it, and in chapter 11, it talks about the eagle. And I've talked about that on here, about the, in the Scriptures, it talks about where the carcasses are, the eagles will be gathered. And I really think that's talking about a military force, that their symbol is an eagle. But it's not just the United States. There's been many, the Romans, that was their symbol, was an eagle. The Germans in World War II, they had an eagle symbol. The Assyrians, I think, had an eagle or something. But now, supposedly, and I don't know, but supposedly the eagle of the United States that's Treasures, and she's in heat, and I've got a voucher to get her fixed. And her two kittens are here. They weaned, but they're still trying to go to her, and she just hisses at them, and so I know she's, and there's a bunch of tomcats. I've been hearing them out here fighting. They just come from everywhere, and I've never seen these cats before. Never seen any of these cats until she started, these started going into heat and stuff. But I can't get her there until May the 7th, so I got to try to keep her. I'm going to put her in a kennel because she tries to escape. She gets behind this chair I'm sitting in, and when somebody tries to come in, she'll shoot out the door. As for me, I know how she is, so when I come in, I shoot my foot over there real quick and, make some noise or whatever to kind of scare her, to get her, keep her from trying. But Becca, she's let her out twice, and she's going to end up with more kittens. And this is one of these Bibles I got on here that I downloaded, it's the King James, and every day it'll upload a daily. I don't know why it did that. All right, here we go. It'll upload like a daily Bible, scriptures to read, and then there's a commentary and then a prayer and all that kind of stuff. I use it just because I like to, I use it to, like if I go to bed or whatever, I can read the Bible out of it. It's just a good way to read without having to hold a book up. And so I've been reading. I started at Genesis and now I'm down to Matthew. So I do that, all the time. I mean, I try to keep reading it, and not to mention when I go in looking for specific scriptures and stuff, but just as my daily habit of reading, I like to read every day. But I decided I wanted to read some of this, and I don't know if y'all have a copy of this. You can download these for free. They don't cost anything. I've got the Book of Enoch, I've got the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Jasher, and then I've got the King James 1611 King James with the Apocrypha in it. And then you got all those extra biblical books that you can go in there and read. Now some of them I think they kind of got slipped in there. And of course Hasatan is that way. I mean, if you can, even in the all Bibles, I believe that he's going to have something in there that's going to be corrupted. That every way he can, if he can, because he's here to deceive us. And of course the Father allows him to do this because he wants to see whether we're truly wanting to know the truth, and if we are, he'll lead us to it through the Ruach. The Ruach will lead us to the truth. But we're navigating. You got to understand that we're navigating. And here it even talks about this. Because Esdras asking the Father. He's saying, why not just have all the people born in one period of time, and be done with it. But he says, well, I'm merciful and long suffering, and that, but there's only a few that are going to be saved, because it's like you're going, like on this side is a wall of fire, and on this side is a great ocean, that you drop off into a great ocean, and you're walking this little narrow path, and this is the way that the world really is. And this is the journey of a believer. That's why it says to get on the straight and narrow path. Because, the abyss is on either side. I mean, it's on either side of that, and you're going to fall off into it. And and I've talked about this, and this is kind of what, and I can hear them cats out there. Them tomcats is going at it, trying to determine who's going to be the one that and she gets around and starts doing that, and they hear that out there, and they'll start singing too, start crooning at her, but then another tomcat shows up, and then they go at it out there, and it's kind of disturbing, but nothing I can really do about it. You run them off and they'll come right back, but anyway, and he's telling him, that in this here, that he's talking about the end of the nation of Israel, their last days, and which was at the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem in 70 AD. That was the end of Israel. That was the end of the nation of Israel, and but it's talking about this power that is, this rules over the whole world. And so this idea that they just ruled over Europe and the Middle East, or part of the Middle East and North Africa and stuff like that, Eastern or Western Turkey, no, they ruled over the whole earth. And I'm going to read it, and y'all can, make up your own opinion about what you think it means. But he ends up giving him the interpretation of it. But I'm going to read it, and y'all can, just kind of come to your own conclusion. Because again, I'm not on here to make you believe anything or make you think anything. I'm just here to present information, and you can do with it as you will. But I hope it will stimulate you to thinking, like, being a good Berean, when Peter, said that the Bereans were more noble than the Thessalonians because they received what he had to say with an open mind, but they searched the scriptures to see whether these things be so. So, I want you to listen and receive it, but then study yourself and figure it out, and see if it's, means the same thing to you. It says, then I saw in a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle. And this matches the prophecy of Daniel too. It's the four-headed beast that comes up out of the sea. This is the same thing, but it's just more detailed than what Daniel gave. It says, then I saw in a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. And I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her, and were gathered together. And I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small. But her heads were at rest. The head in the midst was greater than the other, yet rested it with the residue. Moreover, I beheld, and lo, the eagle flew with her feathers, and reigned upon earth, and over them that dwell therein. And I saw that all things under heaven were subject unto her, and no man spake against her, no, not one creature upon earth. And I beheld, and lo, the eagle rose upon her talons, and spake to her feathers, saying, watch not all at once, sleep every one in his own place, and watch by course. But let the heads be preserved for the last. For the last. And I beheld, and lo, the voice went not out of her heads, but from the midst of her body. And I numbered her contrary feathers, and behold, there were 8 of them. And I looked, and behold, on the right side, I might be going to lose power here. Let's see if we got something to plug into it here. This phone is old, and I can only use it with the nope. Well, I'm just have to go as quick as I can. Hope it'll hold up. It's down to 13%. It says, and I looked, and behold, on the right side of those arose one feather, and reigned over all the earth. And so it was that when it rained, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. Talking about Babylon. So the next following stood up and reigned, and had a great time. The Persians and the Medes ruled. Their empire was the longest of those first 3. It lasted a pretty good while until the Greeks came along. And it happened that when it rained, the end of it came also, like as the first, so that it appeared no more. Then came there a voice unto it, and said, hear thou, that thou hast borne rule over the earth so long. This I say unto thee, before thou beginnest to appear no more. There shall none after thee attain unto thy time. In other words, it won't be around as long as it was. Neither unto the half thereof. Then arose the third, and reigned as the other also before, and appeared no more also. Alexander the Great's reign was very short. And it says, then I beheld, and lo, in process of time, the feathers that followed stood up upon the right side, that they might rule also. And some of them ruled, but within a while they appeared no more. Talking about the 4 kings that took over after Alexander the Great died. For them were set. For some of them were set up, but ruled not. They got taken over by the other 2 of the other ones. After this I looked, and behold, the 12 feathers appeared no more, nor the 2 little feathers. They were the kings that ruled in those empires. And it says, there was no more upon the eagle's body, but the 3 heads that rested, and 6 little wings. Then saw I also that two little feathers divided themselves from the six, and remained under the head that was upon the right side, for the four continued in their place. And I beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the wing thought to set up themselves and to have the rule. And I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly it appeared no more. And this is talking about kings, them rulers that came after Alexander the Great, that took over, and some tried to take over, and then they fell. And I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly it appeared no more. And the second was sooner away than the first. And I beheld, and lo, the two that remained thought also in themselves to reign. And when they so thought, behold, there awakened one of the heads that were at rest, namely, it was that was in the midst, for that was the greater than the two other heads. And then I saw that the two other heads were joined with it, and behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the two feathers under the wing that would have reigned. Those last, the Seleucid and the Ptolemaic empires, they came to an end. And these eagle's heads, these three, were the Roman Empire. But this head put the whole earth in fear, and bare rule over it, in it over all those that dwelt upon the earth with much oppression. And it had the governance of the world more than all the wings had been. More than all the other ones. It ruled more of the world. It ruled the whole world. And after that, it's getting ready to die on me here. I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. But there remained the two heads, the two halves of the empire became two parts, an eastern and a western. But there remained the two heads, which also in like sort ruled upon the earth and over those that dwelt therein. And I beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side. Then, and that was the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Then I heard a voice which said unto me, Look before thee, and consider the thing that thou seest. And I beheld, and lo, as it were, a roaring lion chased out of the wood, and I saw that he sent out a man's voice unto the eagle, and said, Hear thou, I will talk with thee, and the highest shall say unto thee, Art not thou it that remainest of the four beasts whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them? And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth. Over the whole earth. With much wicked oppression, in so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit. For the earth hast thou not judged with truth, for thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and have cast down the walls of such as those did no harm. Therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up up to the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest also has looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. And therefore appear no more, thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body, that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. And so that Roman Empire came to an end, along with the Israel. They both came to an end. And then there was this time of peace, refreshed. It says that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. Because that's the next thing after that. And so that's happened. We know that's happened. I mean, we know that Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans, and that the Roman Empire ended. Of course, the mainstream historical narrative that they've created is that it went on and it finally collapsed in like 476 A.D. It finally collapsed. That they couldn't save it anymore, but it actually there's 12 kings in that. If you look at, which I need to pull it up and verify it, but from Caesar Augustus up to the time of Yahushua, and I think it was, it wasn't it might have been Vespasian, to the time of the destruction of Jerusalem, because I know it was during that time when he was the emperor. After Nero died, he became the emperor, and his son Titus was the one that, and when you read the book by Flavius Josephus, he talks about these Jewish wars that were going on, that they were fighting in, and he got captured, and they spared him because he was, an honorable adversary or whatever, and he got along with Vespasian. I mean, he liked him, and so they kind of respected each other, and so he became sort of an emissary for them to try to get the people there in Jerusalem to put down their weapons and not be destroyed, but they wouldn't do it. They continued to rebel, and of course that's the time that Yahushua was talking about. Whenever you see these armies encamped about Jerusalem, and what people don't understand is they think it was just the Romans, and it wasn't. It's kind of been discovered that they had armies that were the Middle Eastern people, and it wasn't no Islam, it wasn't no such thing. It was just, Arabs and stuff, and they had them conscripted into their armies, and they had Germanic people conscripted into their armies. The so-called Vikings or whatever were part of their armies. Chinese. I mean, they had people from all over the world that were a part of the Roman Empire. And, in here it even is saying that he was the compass, the earth. Compass, what a compass is, well, that's what he's talking about, the entire earth. And, but we've been led to believe that they were just there in Europe and Western Turkey and what they call the Near East, part of the Middle East, and North Africa, Morocco, Egypt, Libya, that area. But in reality, they were everywhere. And now, and this is what gets me, is about myself. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, is how I never saw this stuff for what it really was. I mean, like I say, when you look at the Capitol up there in Washington, and like this one down here in Charleston, and the other ones, once you see this stuff, you can't unsee it. You begin to see it everywhere. Before I'd be walking by one of these structures and, never give it a second thought. I just, we built that, back in the 1800s or whatever. And then now, when you begin to see how similar all the architecture is, and then you find out that, every one of these structures you hear, they founded it. And founded it means finding it. You found it. I mean, if you go look at the definition of founding, I mean, that's what it means, is that you found this. So they found all these buildings, and then they just repurposed them for their own use. But they were already here, and there was a whole lot more of them. And it's funny, if you look up the visions of George Washington, how he supposedly this Native American dressed woman that was green skinned came to him and showed him these visions or whatever, and she showed him a map of the United States. They didn't even know supposedly they didn't even know what the United States looked like, but they had this map She showed them of a map, and it was all these raindrops come down, and they were hitting everywhere that there was a city at, or was going to be a city. But they were already there. Just like Chicago, they say, oh, we founded, again, we founded Chicago in 1840. But there's maps, older maps, that show that place, and they called it Chalaga. It was already there. And so when you begin to kind of put all these things together, you realize that, that stuff there, and also there in Revelations, all that stuff it's talking about there, it's already happened. And that lion, who is the lion? Telling him that his end is, come. Now, what's happening now is that the eagle has been resurrected. Hasatan has resurrected the eagle so that he can convince people that never happened. That there's still yet this tribulation and this millennial kingdom yet to come. The world tomorrow. And so everybody's looking for that when that's why it's all misdirection. It's all meant to direct you to look over here while this is going on over here. So that, and think about this. What's going on right now, I mean, like with Trump and these tariffs and stuff, and he put off the ones to all these 75 countries now came to him, wanting to make a deal. And China, he says, if you don't, respond with some kind of retaliation against us for these tariffs, then we'll work with you. And it'll be good for you. But if you retaliate, it's going to be bad. And China's finding it out. And they're finding out big time. And that, that they need us. And we don't, that America they need America. We don't really need them. Because we don't sell that much over there compared to what they sell here. I mean, they're raping America. And they've been doing it, and they steal intellectual property. They manufacture all this junk, steal the ideas for how to make it and all that stuff, and then turn around and send it over here for less than what it costs to make it, to try to run companies here out of business, out Europe, everywhere, trying to run everybody out of business. And so, the largest market in the world, consumer market in the world, is the United States. And everybody wants to sell here. I mean, everybody does. And everybody, came to the table but China. And China was thinking, well, let's just see how many will come and join up with me, and nobody has. Because the same thing with them countries. They don't sell, China don't let them sell nothing over there. But they expect China to be able to, China expects to be able to sell in their markets and stuff, and without tariffs and all that kind of stuff. And, so they come to join with the United States. Well, that makes sense to me that this is how it's going to play out, is because how are you going to have this, gathering of the, Gog and Magog from the four corners of the earth? And, the gathering from the four corners of the earth, well, you got to unite everybody in the globalist world order that the leftists, the left-hand side, had been trying to, the secular, one-size-fits-all global system, that it's dying. There's a whole new system coming. And that system, and this is going to be religious based. It's going to, it's going to be, I don't know how, how soon it's going to happen, but we can already see Christian nationalism, rising here, Christian nationalism. And of course, President Trump is amassed these people around him, these religious advisors and stuff. And they're convinced about this, Israel, Zion, we got to defend them, we got to be on their side and all that stuff. And really, they're not. They're not Israel. They're not the Hebrews. They ceased to exist in 70 AD. But that's part of it too. And why is it that, there's all these laws been passed to protect them, to defend them? That, if you criticize them in any way, you can be, they can come after you. But there ain't none passed to defend me in what I have to say. And, if what people are saying is not true, then let them defend it. I mean, that's the whole idea behind free speech, is free ideas. And let the truth prevail. Because the truth will prevail. But, there's the Ashkenazis. And they don't say they're not. I mean, there's some other ones that say there's something else, but how do we know? How do they know? And so, I think that Satan would have to and that's probably like his symbol, because if you go all the way back, and of course it doesn't really say that, it just says that their symbol was a serpent. That's the tribe of Dan. But I think maybe in other extra biblical texts it talks about it being changed to an eagle with the snake in its talons, and then ultimately just to an eagle. And supposedly the Spartans, the Greeks, Spartans, that their symbol was the eagle. And some people tend to believe that it may have been the tribe of Dan that became the Spartans, because they were seafaring people. Because you can go read back in the book of Judges when Deborah was the judge, and she was, they got her to, they told her if she wanted to go to war against the Philistines or the Amorites or whoever it was, that she would have to lead them. And because she couldn't find a man that was willing to stand up, and lead them in the battle. So she did it, and she said that the tribe of Dan would not come off of their ships to help them. So they were seafaring people. And so if their symbol was the eagle, and they could have eventually also become the Romans, who knows. But that eagle symbol, you see it all throughout Scripture, and then you see it now. And so I think it's probably, but according to the Freemasons, our eagle symbol really is not an eagle. It's a phoenix. And supposedly, and that would be, symbolic of this resurrection of this system, is what I would say. This resurrection of this satanic system, this worldwide satanic system, but it is cloaked in this religious system. And it also follows this what we see going on. It follows the pattern of what Albert Pike, in his letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, it's following that same thing. That you create this, because if you look at the turmoil, the real powder keg, yeah, Russia and Ukraine, that's an issue, but the real powder keg is the Middle East, the Muslims and the Zionists. Okay, and that's exactly what they said in that letter, that you got to stir up trouble between the Muslims and or Islam and the Zionists, and that you'd have this choosing of sides, and the ones that would back the Zionists and the ones that would back the Islam, and they would fight, and the whole world would be drawn into it, and they would fight until the Christian nationalist would win. But then they would pit the anarchist and the nihilist and the atheist against the Christians, and they would fight until they were just so exhausted and so wore out that they would be ready for the pure doctrine of Lucifer. And so, that's what we see. And I believe that's what we're seeing playing out, because now they're talking about going over there and going at it with Iran, and of course Iran has aligned themselves with Russia and in some part with China, and the alliance between Russia and Turkey and Iran and Turkey is getting more and more. Turkey's more and more pulling back away from, and they're a member of NATO, pulling back away from NATO. Because them kittens, they running around here roughhousing with each other, and but so you can kind of see, and of course we're over there bombing the Houthis because they're interfering with trade, and the truth of the matter is that the United States doesn't have any trade going in and out of that Strait of Hormuz or whatever it is there, that goes into the Red Sea. I mean, it's primarily the Europeans that and the Chinese use it. They go up there and get oil and stuff, and so we're defending this strait and defending the Red Sea, and we're not even benefiting from it in any way. But and the Europeans are, they're not able to defend anything. They're and of course there is a lot of chest thumping over there and all that about building their spending a bunch of money to build a military and all that stuff. But the problem is you got 27 countries that are made up of the European Union, and none of them agree on nothing. So they've got this European Union that's government over governments, and it's unelected. It's not even an elected body. They're just appointed, and so and you got a bunch of countries that are against the stuff that they're doing, like Hungary and the Czech Republic and Romania and some other ones that are not in agreement with what the European Union is doing. And as far as with the immigration and stuff over there. And I think that's part of it too, is to get people so incensed about the immigration that they rise up and run them people out, and over, look at England. I mean, they're in a real mess. They're in a real mess. England and Ireland. I mean, they're just, what's being done to them. But it's all by design, is to create chaos, and and the thing is that I mean, I've looked at it. And of course, anything can happen. I mean, nothing's written in stone as far as what we think. I mean, the Creator has His plan, and it's going to be, fulfilled, regardless of what we do. we're just players, in this play that's going on, and that if we are truly seeking righteousness and truth, we're going to be looking for that straight and narrow way, and we're going to try to navigate it and stay on it, and not fall into the abyss or into the fire. And of course, according to that, there, there's, and Yahushua said it himself. He said, "Straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few who shall find it." And the hope that we have is in eternal life. That's our hope, and that we are accounted worthy to receive it. This world was made for us, and it's our inheritance. And who knows how many of these there are? This is an enclosed system. This is an enclosed world. How many of them are they outside of here besides this? We don't know. We have no idea. But if this is our home, then it would make me, tend to believe that there's others. And that, we just don't really know what's outside of here. The Bible describes it a little bit, but not much. And so I think that we are seeing the final conglomeration, and of course, and I see too, how this predictive programming stuff goes. I've been seeing in on YouTube this thing popping up, and it's this talking about when people were humans, and then showing human 2.0 or whatever. They're trying to get that into people's conscience, because that's ultimately the end game here and I've talked about that, is to create cyborgs that can be controlled. And of course, and now I've been listening to, I try to kind of listen to a broad variety of things just to kind of get a feel for what's going on in the world. It's, we can be believers and be in the world, but it's, there's nothing wrong with knowing what's going on around us. Scripture says, it's the wise man who sees trouble ahead and he hides himself from it. Well, how do you know if there's trouble ahead unless you are cognizant of what's going on in the world around you? You have to be aware. And that's part of it. That's part of our training and raising us up so that we can recognize these things and hide ourselves from it and avoid it and continue along the straight and narrow path. And so I try to be aware of what's going on. And the other thing is that, apparently the rest of the world other than China or whatever, and Russia, and Russia wants to be a part of it too. I can tell you right now, they're kind of wanting to pull away from China, and they want to get relations back with us, because they realize, look, Russia's Formula One, they've got a lot of nuclear weapons, but the United States is far and away the most powerful military, economic power in the world. We've got like 21 aircraft carriers, more than the rest of the world combined. And so, it only stands to reason that, and China will come around too. But you got a lot of belligerence, and I think what they're hoping is that by doing this, that the people over there will rise up and overthrow the Chinese Communist Party and get rid of them. They're responsible, for killing somewhere around 150 million people, their own people. And and so I think that if they put enough hardship on them over there, and people are really in a bad way, they're hoping that they'll rise up and overthrow the Chinese Communist Party. I really believe that's what they're hoping. Whether it will happen or not, I don't know, but a lot of people are predicting it. But this to show just how this is, I think this is Cherokee. And they little rogues. They get into everything. We were supposed to have somebody that was wanting them, and they never did come and get them. And you just stay down from there. You don't get up there. And but they've already had commitments for $7 trillion of investment, reindustrializing the country. So, and not only that, but they come out with these gold cards. leave it to this guy Trump. This guy's always got some scheme going on. But he's scheming these cards, these gold cards. You can, if you want to get one of these H-1B visas or whatever, $5 million. And if you come in and you contribute and you're, a good citizen and all that, you can get citizenship for $5 million. And they've already done sold 10,000 of them. I mean, like the 2 days after they come out, they already had 10,000 of them sold. And it's mainly these big companies that are paying for them. These big, Apple and Nvidia and Intel and TSMC. TSMC's committed to building a $300 billion chip manufacturing facility here. I mean, so, and I believe all that's really tied into this AI stuff, that I've talked about, the Stargate and all that stuff, and the Star Shield and the replicator drones, and now I've even heard about something they call Skyborg. Skyborg. I mean, and when you think about it and you listen to the names of these things and the purposes of them and all that stuff, and then you begin to look back at movies that you've seen over the years, sci-fi and stuff, you got all of this same stuff that they were telling you this stuff 30 years ago, or even earlier, telling you this stuff, putting it out there, predictive programming, getting people, hip to the idea of it. And of course, a lot of people are, man, they think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. That being connected to this system, through your head, being able to get any information you want right straight into your mind without having to use something like this or without having to, use a computer, laptop, tablet, desktop, whatever. They think that's great. But I don't. I don't like the idea of having something implanted in my head, I mean, and of course everybody says, oh, it's the mark of the beast. Well, no, it's not. That happened. I mean, it's been pretty well established now that the Romans did mark people. They had a marking system, and you couldn't buy or sell if you didn't have it. So I'm pretty sure that's what that was. And again, we don't know if we go by the mainstream history and all that stuff. That's part of the deception. We have to, whatever they're telling us, we got to believe that it's just the opposite of that, or something beyond that, because they're it's a narrative they've created, and they're continuing to push a lot of this narrative, even though the truth of it's coming out, like flat Earth. About these buildings, and they even got some of these buildings that they won't even let you go in. The public can't go into them, and then they're hiding stuff like Göbekli Tepe. They're saying, oh, no more excavation, and they've only excavated like 5% of it, but they won't let anybody excavate it anymore. Why? Because they were finding stuff there that's telling us different narrative than what they've been giving us. And now I've heard, also they're saying there's structures that are down under the pyramids, the Great Pyramids. And of course, there's people that have come to the conclusion that those things were some kind of power system, power plants. That they were not tombs or anything like they've tried to make us believe they were. That they were power plants of some type. And so, and that there is all kinds of like coils down underneath them, big columns that have copper coils around them. So they were transmitting energy from the earth up into these things somehow or another, and you know, it was a power system of some kind. And this one guy, he's an engineer up in Illinois up there, and he's a machinist engineer. And he went over there and was making measurements inside of it. And he said, you know, he was talking to somebody in there, and they said, you know, he said, what do you think this is? He says, I don't know. He says, but I get the feeling that if it was doing what it was supposed to do, I wouldn't want to be in here. So, you know, I mean, whatever it was supposed to be, you know, doing, if it was a power plant or something, you know, he says, I don't think I'd want to be in here when it was doing it. So, you know, all this stuff is kind of coming out, and of course they do, you know, some of them are doubling down, you know, on trying to continue to push their narrative, you know, and to keep it going. But, you know, it's eventually they're going to disclose it all. But what they're going to say is that, you know, that Hasatan and them, they're aliens, you know, all that's playing into it. I think all of this deception, the whole of it, like I talked about in my video about it, you know, what would you do if you were Hasatan, bound for 1,000 years? You know, you'd be planning. You'd be planning every kind of thing you could plan, and you'd plan for every eventuality. You know, and the first thing you got to do is you got to hide the past. You got to, you know, change the timeline. You got to get rid, you know, the dark ages. You know, yeah, okay, sure. You know, you got 800, 900 years here that there's nothing written, nothing built, nothing, you know, and but nobody's questioned it. Nobody questioned it until, you know, I'm sure that there have been individuals going back, you know, for the last 200 years that have kind of questioned it, and they are people that they blackball, they even kill them, you know, and shut them up. I mean, or whatever they have to do to get these people to quit talking about it or whatever. Or they make them, you know, in the media, they make you out to be a crackpot or whatever, like they did Nikola Tesla. And now that I think about it, I don't really think Tesla invented any of this stuff, because there's nothing new under the sun. I believe he was reverse engineering stuff. They had him reverse engineering this stuff because Edison and them couldn't figure a lot of it out. But Tesla was able to. He was a smart, really brilliant man, and he was able to reverse engineer this stuff. Like the power plant and all that stuff. He was able to get it back up and running and all that stuff up there on the Niagara River. Because I've seen the footage of that place, and it was old. I mean, you could tell when they were saying it was supposedly built. The buildings and all that stuff that was there were old. I mean, you could tell that, well, if it's new, why does it look so old? It wasn't. It was old. And they had just got it back up and running. He figured out how these dynamos and all this stuff worked. And he also, they were systems that were wireless. And that's where he got his ideas about the wireless electricity. And these airships and stuff, these big spires on top of all these buildings, that's what they were for. They could pull up there and get repowered. And I mean, you know, and when I think about how we have been duped, how easily we are duped. And of course, the way that they do it is through religion. That's their biggest weapon for duping us, is through religion. They push religion, a certain narrative, a certain belief. You know, this ain't happened yet. And so they got everybody in there believing that. And there's some of them, you know, like the Catholics or whatever, that's got them catacombs down under the Vatican there with mile after mile after mile of books. Books that they have gotten from around the world that were in these old structures, that were in the old Roman stuff, and probably books that come probably from Alexandria and from all these other places. They probably swooped in, grabbed these things up during periods of turmoil and right after the reset. The first thing they probably started doing was going around. That's probably what they designated them to do. Cat. Them's the honorous cats. So after the reset, the first thing they got to do again is they got to hide history, got to get rid of it, and then they got to send people out to go around and start trying to find any of this stuff, these libraries and these buildings that were archives and stuff like that, and get all of that stuff and sequester it away. And the only ones that have access to that stuff is the secret societies, the Catholics, and the ones who are a part of the clique, that are a part of the controllers' clique, the ones who have unified themselves with Hasatan. And I mean, they're in the Vatican. They, there's people that have, been whistleblowers, or whatever, said they've got a temple down there down in them catacombs there, a temple to worship Satan in. And they've got all kinds of them down there, different gods. And so, they pretty much show you what their allegiance is to. And so you have all that. Get a little drink of coffee. I drank it out of a fruit jar. Better than nothing. But so all these people that have agreed to go along for power and money and influence and for whatever their reason, for their hatred, their hatred of our Creator and His law, because it constrains them. They can't do all this wickedness and, hurt people and torture people and do all kinds of perverted sexual things and stuff like that to people. They don't like that. They like having the ability to do whatever just like the last book of Judges. They do whatever's right. They want to do whatever's right in their own eyes. I mean, just today, I saw, and it's a guy, is liberal hive mind, and he does these little about 10-minute videos, and he's a sort of a reaction channel. And this woman, she was there in New York City, and she was pro-life. And so she was interviewing people and asking them about their view on abortion and that kind of stuff. And she was talking to this woman, and at first it was, the conversation went okay. And then when she began to, take apart the other woman's argument about, her position on being pro-abortion, that woman turned around and just cold cocked her. I mean, just pow, right in the kisser. And then just took off. And of course they arrested her. Now, whether they'll actually do anything to her, I mean, it's New York City. I mean, they, here in the last few years, they have, not been forthcoming in arresting people, and, they let them out without any bond. And they've done violent crimes and stuff like that, and they let them right back out on the street, and then they don't prosecute them. They dismiss the charges and stuff. I mean, and that's the kind of thing too that will lead to an authoritarian system. And I think it's all by design. They'll crack down, and they'll end up with National Guard troops out there or something, whatever. And Trump is one of these people that is a law and order kind of guy, I mean, and whenever it get, and the greater the mandate he has, and the greater support that he has, then the more, and it's like I said, whenever Benjamin Franklin said, whenever you're willing to give up one of your freedoms, freedoms for security, you won't have either one. You won't have security or freedom. That's how, if you let it get bad, let it just get really bad until people are willing to, give up their freedom, give up the right to bear arms or whatever in order to have security. And so I don't know if that's what the deal is. I'm just speculating. But I do know that that what we're been told and what we're being told is not the way that it really is. And I keep digging into it, and I keep looking and reading some of this stuff, because a lot of times in the scriptures it just gives us sort of a synopsis of stuff. I mean, like when you look at for example, Joshua chapter 10, when he calls the sun to stand still and the moon to stand still, that's pretty much all it says. And they went on to win, and defeat the enemy and wipe them out or whatever. But then you can go read in the book of Jasher, and it gives you, because it even says it there. It says, is it not written in the book of Jasher? So you go read the book of Jasher, and you get more information about it. And it's the same thing all throughout. It'll tell you, well, isn't it written in this book or whatever? The book of, the book of the Jubilees or some other book, and go look, basically saying go look in this book if you want more information. And so I think, that's why it's a good idea to read these and pray over them, for discernment that what you're reading is not something that's been kind of put in there to deceive you or make you believe something that's not true. But a lot of times you can get more information about stuff, and more information about events that has already took place, and get a bigger idea about events that are yet to be fulfilled. Because, in there it keeps talking about the latter days. Now, to me, does that mean the latter days of the nation of Israel? Or the latter days, in the way it's described in there, is the latter days of the world, of this present world. And so I would say that we're in those latter days of this present world. And, the way things are shaking out. And when you look at what that letter from Albert Pike to Giuseppe Mazzini, because he was a Satanist, and Giuseppe Mazzini was Illuminati, same thing, Satanist, Luciferian, that their objective is to bring the world to this Lucifer, worship, and to eliminate anybody that ain't on board with it, or this false Christ. And to eliminate the Zionists, to eliminate the Muslims, to eliminate the atheists, to eliminate the nihilists and an anarchist and all that stuff, to eliminate all them people. I mean, that's their objective. And, then the ones that to be left with is these disillusioned Christians, so-called Christians. And that they will be ripe for the pure doctrine of Lucifer. And of course, whether that's going to happen or not, play out that way, I don't know. But it seems to me that there has been people that have had this stuff being planned. And I mean, when you look at the origins of like the Illuminati and all, where it started at, and at what time, 1776, same year the United States started. and it was financed and initiated, or he Adam Weishaupt was encouraged by Meyer Rothschild, which I believe they are the controllers. The Rothschilds, Warburgs, Pinkins, Kuhnlobes, Pioris, Rockefellers. I believe they're the controllers. And, they have intermingled with Hasatan and his bunch. And so it would stand to reason that if that's where they wanted you to, where Satan wanted you to wind up at, is into this Luciferian worship, his seed, the seed of the serpent, then that's where it would come to. And of course, that they would be, they're going to reveal themselves at some point. And I don't know, I guess we'll see. But it's just good to be aware of all these things, that, the technologies, the conflicts that are around, happening in the areas that, of course, Scriptures talks about them. These powers, Gog and Magog and all that stuff. But I believe that Gog is a spirit. It's I don't know if it's a principality. I think it's a principality, an evil principality. And Magog, of course, was descended from Japheth, and those people in the east there. And of course, I think they'll play a part in it, but what's to say that we ain't, that America ain't, Magog, or a part of it, I mean, the people here or whatever, but because it talks about Gog and Magog twice. It talks about them, in Ezekiel 38, and people say, oh, that's, happens at the tribulation or whatever. Some people believe it happens before the tribulation, but the Scripture says it happens at the end. So I believe Ezekiel 38 and Ezekiel and Revelation chapter 20, I believe they're the same. It's talking about the same thing. I mean, but anyhow, to be aware of these things is a good, is nothing wrong with it, to be aware of what's going on in the world around us, so that we can be prepared for what's coming, to know when it's coming. I mean, like I said, it says this is the wise man who sees trouble coming and hides himself from it. It's the foolish man who rushes in and suffers for it. Because there's going to come a time, when true believers, people that refuse to bow down to Hasatan and Lucifer, are going to be the ones that are going to be the enemy. And, I don't know what we can do, and especially in this age with the stuff that they got now. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot we can do to, get away from it. But also listen to this other guy. I think it's Truth Unedited or something like that. But he was talking about a greater exodus, a second exodus. Maybe there will be, to the camp of the saints, there at Mount Zion, the center of the world. I don't know, but we can hope. because it says, pray that Christ said, pray that you be counted worthy to escape these things and to stand before the Son of Man. Because he's going to be there at judgment too. Just like he was there at the beginning of the millennial kingdom, and he judged those people. They were judged about their faithfulness and what they were going to, rule over during the millennium. So with that, I think I'm going to call it a wrap here. I just kind of wanted to bring that up, get you to think about it, and you can, tell you, you can download this stuff if you don't have a hard copy. Some people have a 1611 with the Apocrypha. Some people have just the Apocrypha separate. But that there is pretty convenient for me. But other than the fact that that phone don't hold a charge very long, I usually keep it on a charge all the time because I just use it for an alarm clock. And like I say, when I go to bed, I can read a couple chapters or read a chapter and read the little what do you call it, daily devotional kind of thing or whatever. So but anyway, just kind of wanted to bring that in and see what you think about it, and see if it, because again, the eagle is the symbol of the United States. I think it has significance in some way. Again, the Freemasons say it's a phoenix. Either way, but it's funny, wherever the carcass is, wherever the carcass is, the eagles will be gathered. And if you look at a U.S. service person's uniform, there's eagles all over it. So you do with it as you will. But I'm going to call it a day. I love you folks. I hope you all will be blessed and have a good rest of your week. And I'll see you on the next Shabbat if Yahweh is willing.